Sal Daggett from Farm Table Foundation and Sue Catt from Hungry Turtle Institute. We're here for week 2 of our Victory Garden shows, and I think we're ready to get started. So we are going to start out this week by talking about raised beds, since it sounds like a lot of people are thinking about putting in some raised beds in their backyards. We've got a lot of questions on what kind of soil should I buy, how much soil should I get, and so we're just going to talk a little bit about figuring that out. So I think the first thing we're going to try to do here with our raised bed as an example is show you how to calculate the volume of soil you're going to need. So it's a little bit of math, but it shouldn't be too scary. So all you need to calculate the size of your bed is a measuring tape or even a ruler or a yardstick if that's all you got. So we are going to just measure this across. So we've got 2 feet, and this one's going to be a lot longer, but we're going to say this is probably about 12 feet, so I don't have to walk all the way back there. And then I would say this is another 2 feet deep. So if it's 2 feet by 12 feet by 2 feet deep, this bed is going to be 48 cubic feet of soil. So that is going to be, if you have, bags of soil and they're 2 cubic feet, you're going to need 24 bags of soil to fill this space up. So once you figure out the volume of soil that you need, then you can determine if you're going to buy bags, or if you have a lot of raised beds, it might make more sense for you to get a load of soil delivered to you via truck, or go to a different source and pick it up yourself if you've got a truck. So that's one way to figure out how much space you're working with, how much soil you're going to need.
If you are going to be looking for a larger quantity of soil, we do have some sources for soil that you can purchase and have people deliver it. And so we will be putting those sources in the comments. As far as what to put in your raised bed, you can, mainly you're going to want to be thinking about soil and compost. And the soil should be what would be called topsoil. It shouldn't be a subsoil. So Sal will talk a little bit more about that. But so you're going to want some soil, you're going to want some compost, and then maybe like a potting soil mix or something that has some like some peat moss, some vermiculite, some perlite, maybe some sand. Those kinds of things will lighten it up a little bit. You don't need a ton of that, but some of that in your raised bed would be helpful. Sal, do you want to talk us through how we know a good soil?
Sure, yeah. So I think when you're looking at soil, one of the most important things, or just kind of the easiest indicators, is looking at the color of it. So if it's a dark color, that's usually just kind of indicating that there's more organic matter, which is going to be really healthy and add those nutrients to your soil. And you can look at it, and if you get it a little bit moist, and just like pick up a chunk in your hand and just really look at it and see, do you see sand crystals in it? Do you, is it really clay? Is it hard to break up? So just like taking a look at your soil, and if you're kind of figuring out what to buy, then you might be able to go to a landscaping center and pick up your soil, and you can kind of figure out what ratios you need by what it looks like. Otherwise, keeping in mind to just make sure that there is a good 25 to 50% compost, maybe, depending on how good the topsoil is. And if you're getting topsoil from, if you're getting in bags, it's a little more reliable, it's a little more consistent. In just bagged soil, like they have raised bed mixes or compost, so you're a little bit easier to figure out, do I want to use half of this bag and then half compost, half raised bed mix. But if you're getting it from another source, just think about the topsoil. You don't really know where it's coming from, so it might, if it was coming from where they're building a house, that used to be a cornfield, it might be a little depleted in nutrients. So that's why it's really important to have that compost that you're adding to it to make sure that it's really full of nutrition for your plants.
So speaking of adding compost, another thing that we should really talk about is making your own compost. And compost is one of these things that's a fine art and a fine science, but you can also, things in nature literally want to decompose. And so You can be as scientific about it as you want to be, or you can also throw things together and they'll do their thing eventually. So there's people who are very, very particular about it, and then there's people like me who just kind of let it happen. But there's a lot of options for compost, and one thing you can think about, it looks nice, it keeps things in place, is some kind of a compost bin system like this one here at Farm Table. You can also just throw things in a pile. The main thing you have to remember about compost is that you need both carbon and nitrogen. Carbon tends to be dry and brown, things like weed stems or corn stalks, or if you can kind of picture those things. And the nitrogen sources tend to be wetter, and you can imagine like manure, but also even just like fresh lawn clippings. So what you want is just a mixture of brown things and either green things or wet things, and that's usually a good way to kind of make sure that you've got all the elements you need in your compost pile. Now, things you can do to speed it up, you can cut things into smaller chunks, and you can mix it. So both of those things will allow the carbon and nitrogen to react to each other better, and that speeds up the process. You can also just throw stuff in a pile and let it sit there, and eventually it will be compost as well. So it's kind of a personal preference on that. What do you think about compost, Sal?
You know, I have to say I have done a lot of the piling system myself, or just having a kind of a hole or a little low point in the yard, and you know, we'll just throw weeds in there, throw whatever we've got in there, and then we don't even stir it or mess around with it. We'll just leave it there, and then the next spring we'll go and dig into it, and usually there's enough decomposed items that we're able to take that and then supplement, add it to our garden beds. So I think, the compost bin systems can be really nice, and you can have a little more control. You can stir them around a lot and try to get that compost produced really fast. Otherwise, the hands-off approach is always a favorite of mine.
Yeah, and I think just so you know, like, this is not the last time we'll talk about compost as we're going through, or soil quality for that matter. As we're going through this season, we're going to be actively doing our garden and doing the composting, and so we'll be talking about all these things, and if you have questions, again, make sure and let us know in the comments, and we will try and help you with any questions you might have, and we'll also post some resources on composting in the comments.
So our last topic for today is talking a little bit about our bed design and figuring out how you're going to fit your plants into your space. So I have here 2 sketches, and one of them is just a 20 by 20 that we talked about. I just put in 4-foot beds, 2-foot spacing between beds, and just kind of mapped out my plants, trying to leave a foot of space between some of the bigger plants, or 1.5 feet if possible. This is just one of the many different kinds of garden designs that you could do for your own garden. The second sketch is how I would do a raised bed garden. So as you can see, they're a little bit smaller and the plants are closer together. So still trying to leave at least 1 square foot for each plant, but just, demonstrating that you can design your garden really in a lot of different ways. And if you want to use an online resource, you can look up Vegetable Garden Planner on the internet, and you can find a variety of sites that will offer these free applications. You can use your computer or your phone to design your garden. They have the spacing requirements for the plants already preset, so you can just go in and type in how many plants you have, and it's an interactive way for you to move plants around and just kind of plan out your space. And we'll be talking a lot more about this in the next 2 weeks as we actually get our Victory Garden going.
All right, well, just a reminder, the plants will be ready sometime around May 23rd, and we will give you more details next week. And then we are looking at a planting date about a week later. We should be getting in our gardens the end of May or early June. So I think that's it for this week, and thanks for coming. We'll see you next week.
Thanks, everybody.